There's no doubt about it, and whether people like it or not, making comparisons to Dan Carter, when Dan Carter was in his prime and playing fantastic rugby, the rest of the All Black team were lifting to a new level, and I think that's what's going to happen with Sasha Feinberg and Ngoma Zulu's impact on the South African team. I think he's going to bring the standard of play from the rest of the Springboks up to another level, and that's scary for every opposition around the world. G'day everyone, welcome to Inside Rugby with Mark. If you haven't been here before, my name is Mark. I'm a Kiwi rugby fan and I live here in beautiful Cancun, and this morning the sun is just coming up and I'm going to go and sit in my park and talk about my favourite game. Yes, rugby. We're going to talk about the Springboks against Japan, played yesterday at Wembley Stadium in London, and what an exciting game it was from a number of perspectives. And I'm going to give you my views and opinions as we review that game together and talk about all the things that happened and the things that we've got to look forward to. So let's go and sit down and have a chat about it. Now, the Springboks went into this game with 781 caps amongst their team versus Eddie Jones's pretty young Japanese outfit. So it was going to be interesting to see how long the Japanese could stay with the Springboks. And Eddie Jones made no secret of it, that he thought that if Japan started off well in this game, then they might be able to stick in it for a while with the South Africans. But that wasn't going to be the case, because South Africa got off to a fantastic start. And let's face it, the weather conditions were pretty horrible at Wembley yesterday for the type of rugby that we wanted to see from both teams. But that certainly didn't stop them from trying to put on a spectacle. And a spectacle they did in the end. But we're only 3 minutes into the game and Siya Kolisi went over for a good try for South Africa on the back of some really great forward work, and it showed early on that the South Africans were going to get some domination up front, and this was going to be the platform that they were going to be able to excite the crowd that had turned up, which wasn't very good in my opinion. But I'm sure that most of the South Africans are going to be going to Paris on the Eurostar from London next weekend to watch the game against France. But never mind, it was a good try from Siya Kolisi, and it got South Africa on the board and got them on the front foot, and I think that was important in this game to get some momentum going early on. Now, what happened next was South Africa started to get control of the forward play, and they started getting some penalties, which led to obviously some possession and some territory. In the 13th minute of the game, we saw that man put his stamp on this game. It was Sasha Feinberg and Ngoma Zulu. He did a kick chase opportunity, got up pretty early for the ball. I thought could have been a hint of a touch of a knock on in there, but he went on to score yet again another brilliant individual try, and this really set South Africa on fire. I think it gave them a bit of heart in the belly, showed them that they were going to be able to dominate this team from Japan. And Sasha Feinberg and Ngoma Zulu, well, what can you say? Well, I look at this guy play, particularly this weekend, and I compare him to George Ford and Bowden Barrett and the Japanese first five and Tane Edmund from Australia, and I think he's on a completely different level. That's right. So it was a great try from Sasha Feinberg and Ngoma Zulu, a little bit like the one we saw him score against Argentina with a kick chase, but this one ended in a very good try as well. And then we only had to wait another 4 minutes before Sasha was added again, this time from 25 metres out from the Japanese line. A fantastic solo break, aka Dan Carter like, should I say that or not at this stage? But it was, and he got over for another great try, just putting the ball down before the dead ball line. Did you catch that? A little bit of brilliance at the end of that try from Sasha Feinberg and Ngoma Zulu. And South Africa were up and running and away with this game, 19 points to nil after as many minutes. And there was no doubt that Japan were going to be in a bit of trouble. What I liked about South Africa in this first opening of this game is they were controlling possession, they were deciding what they were going to do, and Sasha was calling the shots from number 10. Exactly what you want from your number 10 in any team, and that's something that we've seen to be lacking a little bit from some of the other teams that I watched play this weekend. So a great try from Sasha, his second in the game already, and he stamped his authority on it. But it wasn't going to be one-way traffic for Sasha Feinberg and Ngoma Zulu in this game, because it was going to be a great team effort from South Africa. Now, that second try from Sasha was scored in the 19th minute of the game, and to give Japan their credit, they kept coming at South Africa whenever they got the opportunity. They just weren't getting enough possession and turning that into good territory, so they were making hard work of it. But they did hold out until the 35th minute of the first half before they leaked any more points in this game. And unfortunately, it was through just ultimate pressure from South Africa that they ended up getting a penalty try in the dying minutes of the first half. It was relentless pressure from South Africa, and we were seeing fantastic performances, I thought, by the likes of Franco Mostert in particular, who was doing well, and Lute Jager, who was getting some great line-out ball for the Springboks. RG Schneemann was doing a couple of his brilliant little offload flick passes that I love to watch, and it was setting up the back line with lots of opportunity. Colby was getting involved from the back, any opportunity that he could, and Kurtley Arendse was getting more and more in the game, and we're going to see a lot more from those guys in the second half. So we went to half time at 26 points to 0 in favour of South Africa. 4 tries to 0 scored in that first half. Of course, Khaleesi getting 1, Sasha Feinberg and Ngomazulu getting 2, and a penalty try to round it out at the end of the first half. But I really thought that South Africa were going to really turn on the afterburners in the second half. I'd said in my preview video they were probably going to grind Japan down in that first half, and particularly when the South African bench came on, then that was going to be the draw card for them in the second half. Now, the only downside for South Africa in that first half, and it was a downside, it was Oxenchair picking up an injury, and he's going to be out of the rest of the Northern Tour for South Africa. So that's really bad news. I'm a big fan of Oxenchair, as a lot of you are, and it's going to be a shame to see him not participate in the rest of this tour. Gerhard Steenenkamp came on for him during that first half. So I think Rassie would have been pretty happy at half-time with the Springboks, and he would have said to them, boys, we need to put the pedal on the metal in the second half. As far as Eddie Jones would have said, he would have said, well guys, let's go out there and try and win the second half, because we did pretty well in periods of that first half. We just didn't execute our plan. Now, as far as Japan players go, Yazaki was a standout for me. They're number 15, their fullback. He's got a great story, this guy. He's never played a game of professional rugby. He's in the Japanese team. In fact, he goes to university, and Eddie Jones had to get him out of university with special permission to come and play in this particular game. So keep your eye on Yazaki at fullback. He's going to be a great one for Japan as they move forward. He gets a bit more experience, and he wasn't finished in this game. He was going to do something pretty good in the second half. Now, talking about the second half, we didn't have to wait long before South Africa kept the momentum going in this game. And guess who it was who scored next? It was Wilco Louw for his first ever test try for the Springboks. A fantastic moment, and boy, did he look like he was never going to get stopped when he saw the try line in front of him. That set the scene. I think after the first 6 minutes of the first half, the South Africans again were doing the grind up front. It was working very well. They were keeping the Japanese under control. In fact, it wasn't going to be the Springboks that scored again after that try from Wilco Louw. No, it was going to be the Japanese that took their opportunity. It was that fullback that I just mentioned, Yazaki, who had the presence of mind to take a quick tap kick just meters out from the Springboks line, catch them all napping. They weren't ready for that, and he went over to score Japan's one and only try in this particular game. It was a fantastic moment for the young man, something he'll remember for the rest of his life, scoring a try against the back-to-back world champions in Wembley Stadium in London. That's something that any sports person will have in their memoirs, that's for sure. So good on Yazaki for doing that quick tap and getting that try for Japan. Were they back in the game? No, they weren't. South Africa were going to grind away a little bit more, and they were going to show us all what they can do in the last 20 minutes of a game, as we've seen throughout the season so far. The South Africans are able to put it all into another gear and use their replacements to really grind away and score some very impressive points. And that's what we saw from the Springboks in the last 23 minutes of this game. It was compelling viewing. If you were a rugby fan, doesn't matter what country you represent. We saw 4 very good tries in that last 23 minutes of the game, 2 of them going to Kurtley Arendse, one set up specially by Cheslin Colby, which was a brilliant kick through, and Arendse was the one on the end of that one. The ball bounced up nicely, he went over for a try, he got another good try as well. And then we saw Andre Esterhuizen going over, who had come on as a hybrid player playing in the forwards in this particular game. He'd come on for Siya Kolisi, and he'd done a fantastic job. He'd actually been over the try line once before earlier in the game. It was disallowed, but he wasn't going to be held back in the game, and he finally got over for a very, very good try. And by the time Jesse Creel went over the line after the 78th minute of the game, it was already over. A nice consolation try to him, and South Africa had put on 61 points to 7 against Japan. A very big statement indeed, and a great warm-up game as they get prepared now to take on France at the Stade de France in Paris next weekend. I'm going to talk about why I think this was a perfect game for South Africa. Rassie had talked about it before the game and saying they needed a game like this, a good warm-up game, getting everybody back into the fray again, getting the rhythms and combinations going, and looking at what was going to happen with the likes of having Sasha Feinberg and Ngomazulu start this game. We saw Manie Libbok come on. He's got a very, very heavily bandaged leg. I'm not too sure what's going on there, whether he is carrying a bit of a serious injury or not. We'll have to keep an eye on it. Maybe the South African fans watching this video can let me know about Manie Libbok's leg. I took a particular notice of that when he came on in the second half. But it was a very well managed game by South Africa, this, and I really got to see them in another dimension, because when we talk about their dominance at the moment in World Rugby, and they are the dominant team in World Rugby, there's no doubt about it, we're starting to see it across the park. And if you go through the whole team, they all played very, very well. It wasn't just Sasha Feinberg and Ngomazulu controlling this game. He had his parts of magical brilliance again, but it was really, really good play, and I think everybody played their role. Cheslin Kolbe had a good game at fullback. He came into the line on different occasions. Yeah, he did a couple of little errors and silly things, but the conditions were poor. But the way that he set up that try with a great run through, first of all, about 40 metres, and then put the kick through, and Arendse was able to get on the end of that. That was a little bit of brilliance. Kurtley Arendse, he's got to be one of the best finishers in the world game at the moment. Absolutely brilliant on the wing. And Ethan Hooker, although a little bit quiet again, we saw some good runs from him, good solid stuff, and he's going to build into a very good winger in this South African team. Damian Deolandi and Jesse Creel were back in the 12 and 13 jersey this weekend, and I like what they brought to the game. We saw some good runs from Damian Deolandi at critical times in this game where Japan were just getting a little bit of ball. He took control, got South Africa back up over the gain line again, and you should never underestimate how important these types of plays are from players like Damian Deolandi, and I thought he was very, very good. Again, partnering with Jesse Creel, and those guys were good on defence when needed against this Japan team who looked elusive at times in trying to get through the South African defence. At number 10, we had that great work again from Sasha Feinberg and Ngomazulu, two pieces of brilliance, setting up those tries for himself, and also then changing out. So obviously Rassie has a plan for France. And then at halfback, Cobus Reinhardt, not so much running this weekend from Cobus. We saw more of him just distributing, letting the game flow for the South Africans, and that was a good point as well, because it did flow for the South Africans in difficult conditions. And at times, while it was stop-start, they did get into a rhythm, and particularly in that last 23 minutes, South Africa were absolutely awesome in putting those tries against a tiring Japanese outfit that had been ground into the ground at that stage of the game. And then in the forwards, we saw good performances, of course, from Jasper Wiese. Sio Kolisi played a very good game until he was taken off and reserved his 99th game in the Springboks jersey. And of course, we're bound to see him get his 100th cap next weekend at the Stade de France in Paris. And what an occasion that is going to be for Sio Kolisi and all of his fans across the world, of which I am one of them. And then on the other side, I thought Franco Mostert had a good game for the Springboks. He was busy while he was on the field and doing a lot of good things. And then we saw also great performances, I thought, from R.G. Snyman and Lut de Jager. They were getting a lot of ball. Snyman, I love the way that he offloads the ball. He doesn't go to ground with the ball. He's always looking to get rid of it and keep the play flowing. And that's what you want in a player like him with the great wingspan that he has. And then in the front row, well, it was just the Springboks being the Springboks, wasn't it? It was Malcolm Marx doing some really, really good work there. And I thought that Oxenchair, and then replaced by Gerhard Steenenkamp, were doing some good things. But when Wilco Low came on, it was another level for the Springboks. And I thought also Grobbelaar played his role in that as well. No doubt about it, the bench was fantastic for the Springboks. We saw immediate impact from Quagga Smith when he came on. And it was just, once again, the South Africans doing what they do so well. And the only other team I saw this weekend that could get anywhere near the Springboks team, I thought, was England, who I'll talk about in my other review video, so make sure you check that out. But this was a complete performance from the Springboks as a team. Yes, it did have that individual brilliance from Sasha Feinberg and Ngoma Zulu, but across the park this weekend, the Springboks were strong. They knew their game plan. They were going to go after Japan. They were going to wear them down 26-0 at halftime, and then they kicked on in the second half. And that last 23 minutes was absolutely dominance. And it doesn't matter whether it was against Japan or any other team, as we've seen them do that to the All Blacks, of course, in Wellington. Springboks team knows how to close out games in the last quarter, and that's what's going to be important, of course, as we head to the big tournament in 2027. So great performance from South Africa. Let me know in the comments who you thought your outstanding players were. Now, what's Rassie going to do in preparation for the France game next weekend at the Stade de France? What selections is he going to do? Is he going to put Sasha Feinberg at number 10? I think he has to on this form that we're seeing at the moment, and have a backup plan if it's not working too well. But I just think he brings so much to this team now. The team also lift when you have a player of this brilliance coming in. And there's no doubt about it. And whether people like it or not, making comparisons to Dan Carter, when Dan Carter was in his prime and playing fantastic rugby, the rest of the All Black team were lifting to a new level. And I think that's what's going to happen with Sasha Feinberg and Ngoma Zulu's impact on the South African team. I think he's going to bring the standard of play from the rest of the Springboks up to another level, and that's scary for every opposition around the world. So it was a very good win, I thought, from the Springboks at Wembley. I thought it was a controlled game. I thought they didn't overplay the game. They kept to their strategy. They used their pieces of power when they wanted to. They got the ball up high. They bet the Japanese in the aerial contest. They got good ball from the line out. Their scrum was dominant, and their impact off the bench was significant. What else can you ask for from a rugby team? And that showed in the score on the board, and also the way that they played throughout this game. Yep, there was a couple of momentum shifts to Japan. You're going to get that in every game, but overall this was a statement performance from the Springboks, and they'll be very happy as they head to Paris now to take on the French next weekend. So I'm going to head in and get some breakfast now and contemplate making a couple of more videos. I'm going to talk about the England-Australia game. There's lots of stuff to talk about in that one. And of course, New Zealand against Ireland as well. Played at Soldier Field in Chicago yesterday. I've got plenty to say on that one, as you would expect, being a Kiwi rugby fan. Okay, so let me know in the comments what you thought of this game, Springboks versus Japan. Did you see it the way that I did? A complete performance from the Springboks, and now we can lick our lips and get ready for what's going to happen at the Stade de France next weekend. Probably one of the games of the year, I'm suspecting. It'll be very exciting indeed. And don't forget, if you follow my channel on a regular basis and you haven't hit the subscribe button yet, please do it. It's free, doesn't cost you anything, helps me a lot with the YouTube algorithm, as does making a like, a thumbs up, and dropping a comment on this particular video. I would appreciate it very, very much. Okay, that's it for now. Time to say good morning, adios from beautiful Cancun in Mexico, and I'll see you all again very soon here on Inside Rugby with Mark. Bye for now, everyone.